Alright, okay.
I'm not.
Sex and violence,
I'm
take
Irish
one.
and I'm Jewish.
Sex and violence, take one. We have drums.
The drum, Sydney.
And
Alright.
sex.
And
Alright, so you're gonna be
Kaylin and Matt.
You're gonna be sex and violence.
And
You're
Daniel and
both.
Rachel will play violence.
Alright,
Yeah,
alright.
you have to do sex too then.
Alright.
Alright, so
1, 2, 3, 4. Sex. And violence. Sex. And violence.
Sex and violence.
And violence.
And
Sex
violence.
and violence.
And violence.
Sex and violence.
Sex.
And violence.
And violence. Sex and
And
violence.
violence.
And
Sex and
violence.
And
violence.
violence.
Sex and violence.
And violence.
And violence. Sex and violence.
And violence.
And
And
violence. Sex and
Violence.
violence. Sex and violence.
And violence.
And violence.
wonder
Sex
what's going
and
up at the
violence.
top
Sex
right
and
now.
violence.
Violence.
Sex and violence. Sex and violence. Sex and violence.
And violence.
And violence.
Sex.
I like sex.
And
I
violence.
really like sex.
And violence.
Fuck yeah.
We got
And
it.
violence.
We got it.
And violence.
That's
Sex
a song.
and violence. That's it.
That's it. That's it.
Yeah.
Alright, this is going on.